Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Telco Talk. I'm Natasha Jacobs. With the advent of social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter and Mixit, there's been a fundamental shift in the way we communicate. With consumers increasingly making use of cheaper, non-traditional communication platforms, it seems that telecommunication service providers have had to face the fact that they are affected by the digital economy. What are telcos doing to adapt to the shifting communication landscape? Joining me in studio today to share their views is Samantha Perry, editor at Brainstorm magazine, Tim Walter, executive head of marketing at Nashua Mobile, and Robin Milham, head of sales for Southern Africa at Research in Motion. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Sam, I'm going to start with you. The telco versus social media discussion has been going on for quite some time, 2 to 3 years, and it's seemingly the problems they face is twofold: erosion of traditional revenue models and pressure to expand networks, and they're not getting any return on investment from the platforms putting pressure on them in the first place. With this in mind, how have telcos responded to this?
Yeah, it's slightly more complicated than telecoms versus social media. Social media is something that runs on telecommunications networks. So social media platforms are merely a different form of content that telcos can use to run across the networks. Telcos should be making a lot of money out of data revenue from social media, particularly services like Twitter, where you pay for the data. Other services like Mixit, where the model is slightly different, they make less money off. But really, the telcos, if they're optimizing their networks correctly, can make a lot of money out of social media. They just need to be punting it accurately.
Are they, though?
I don't think so. I think the market as a whole, a lot of the innovation around social media has been driven by the handset manufacturers as opposed to the telcos. And what we've seen is that gradually this is eating into the revenue which telcos have enjoyed from other means of communication. So SMS per customer on our base is down about 15% year on year. So that's a dramatic drop in SMS communication. It's been taken up by the likes of BBM and WhatsApp and Mixit and what have you. I think it's a classic disintermediation issue, is that the value of these transactions is at either end of the pipe as opposed to in the middle, and I think telcos are struggling to come to grips with that.
Now, Robin, your company is known for being the first in its pack, leading innovation, having a full end-to-end solution with inclusion of these platforms. But if we take it back to the telco space, and as Sam said, there could be a lot of money being made, but it's not being made, not on a global level and neither on a local level.
Natasha, I don't necessarily know if one could say that it's not being made. I think what it is doing is it certainly is changing the landscape in terms of how telcos make money and what their revenue models are. I do think that there would be a stretch to say that money is not being made. What I do think, though, is that it is forcing telcos to re-look at the way that they are interacting with their customers and to look at their business models in terms of their customers. But I certainly think that that there is certain innovations that are already happening in the marketplace that is showing us that that's not necessarily the case. I think that it's just about re-looking a business model, so to speak.
Speaking of business models, if we talk about European telcos, we've seen an outcry for the likes of Orange and Vodafone saying to these OTT platforms, we have to upgrade our networks because of the pressures you're putting us under, but we're not getting anything from you. Do you think that's an avenue people should be pursuing?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's an avenue people should be pursuing. At the end of the day, running a telco network is an enormously CapEx intensive exercise, as anybody who knows the market will tell you. And you can either invest in a network and keep maintaining it and have a high degree of quality, which gives you high prices, or you can have low prices, which is going to give you a concomitant low quality. So the operators are kind of in a bit of a quandary because, as you say, they're not making the kind of returns on the data traffic that they're getting. I'm not entirely sure why. There must perhaps be a way around the situation. On face value, it's yes, okay, Facebook's getting the benefit of that traffic. But at the end of the day, a telco network is like any other network. The internet works. You don't see people, sitting there complaining, oh, we're not making any money off Facebook. The guys running the internet pipes are sitting there quite happily making tons of money off Facebook. Why the mobile operators perhaps having a battle with it? In Europe, certainly the high cost of 3G licenses would be a major problem. In South Africa, the sheer geographical size of the country means that the economies of scope and scale are significantly different to that in Europe. But ultimately, that's where the market is going. The market is going to content, the market is going to data, the market is going to IP, and the operators running those networks need to work out how to run their pipes as efficiently, as effectively as possible, and to stop trying to be sexy and to start actually providing a decent quality service and doing their jobs. And not running around trying to be content providers, for example, because that's not their job.
Look, I think with the content issue, and I mean, although it's not social media as such, if you take downloading a book from a Kindle application on an iPad onto that iPad, the operator will be probably charging it, that file is probably about 1.5 megs large, which should probably be R3 if there's no data bundle. But Amazon at the other end is making 60 Rand off the sale of a book. So the operators are facing an issue where telcos are eating their lunch, and from a particular transaction, they're not making as much. I think what we will see, though, is that, and we're starting to see it with the likes of MTN, for instance, who have brought out tariff plans which specifically focus on certain data usage types. So,
the bundles and things.
But also a data bundle which only which gives you all you can eat data, but only for Facebook and Twitter. So deep packet inspection, new technologies which allow them to build differentially.
I think on that point, Natasha, what is interesting to see is we've worked with various carrier operators in Africa in terms of having a look at the types of tiers that their customers would be interested in. So in other words, enabling customers to be able to use smartphones, because that certainly is the trend if we look at the kinds of penetrations we're going to start seeing.
Because the mobile penetration in Africa is enormous.
Absolutely. I mean, it's predicted, according to Gartner, that we're going to reach 80% penetration of smartphones by 2014. So, certainly the movement is there in terms of that. So I think it is important to look at what do customers want. So it's not a one-size-fits-all anymore. It's what do customers want. So in the example that Tim used, there is it just Facebook. So let's work out a tariff view for just Facebook. And then, taking those types of tiers to customers and also giving the customer the ability to buy up. As he becomes more and more used to his smartphone and used to his content and wants more, which inevitably happens, he now has the ability to buy up. So it's important not to have a one-size-fits-all.
So no vanilla options for anyone.
Yeah.
Samantha, we've been talking about innovation. How important is innovation in this space, in this part of the game?
For telcos, critical. Many of them, in South Africa, Telkom is a prime example of a very old telecommunications monopoly that has some very old infrastructure, some very old pipes, and unfortunately in Telkom's case, some very old ways of thinking too. But they need to innovate, they need to take the infrastructure they have, and they need to be able to provide what they call next generation services over that. For telcos to remain relevant and to stop having other providers eating their lunch, they need to be able to innovate. I think perhaps that it's become too important to be sexy for many companies. I think perhaps just focusing, Telkom is another prime example. If they actually just focused on being a network infrastructure provider, they'd have a great business model. But it is obviously more complicated than that. And the telcos need to innovate in terms of their technology, their product development, the way they go to market, the way they, just the clear disregard for customers when services go down, for example. I was offline overnight. Now, if I'd had a crisis at 2 in the morning, I have no means of getting hold of anybody. And they don't even warn you that we're doing maintenance on the cell that affects your neighborhood. That complete blatant disregard for the people who pay your bills is certainly an area where we could use an enormous amount of innovation from the telcos.
I see you agreeing with that, Tim.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with it from a customer relationship perspective. The innovation also is, I think, might come from non-traditional means. So for instance, one of the things we're focusing on at National Mobile is the fact that we've got a billing relationship with 850,000 people. And doing that, if we can leverage that for things like content or other non-telco related services, we can even in a deflationary environment, at least maintain our share of wallet with the particular customers, which is, I think, an important means of maintaining revenue.
Because surely it's driven from a consumer side. Consumer drives technology and service and not the other way around.
I think certainly, Natasha. I mean, it's that's one way of looking at it. But I certainly do think that it is important to listen to customers and to listen to what customers want. And at BlackBerry, one of the things that we've prided ourselves in, specifically in terms of our African story, is being able to provide access to content for our customers and being able to provide access to the internet. For example, in Africa, sometimes for people, the first time that they've ever accessed the internet may be on a smartphone, and certainly on a BlackBerry smartphone for a lot of our customers. So we've certainly made sure to listen to the heartbeat in terms of what customers are telling us, and to really make sure that we're delivering what the customers are wanting.
Speaking of the mobile side, we know that there has been some critique saying that the days of the PC is over and everything is moving to tablets and smartphones. Is this what telcos should be focusing on, is seeing how they can push the mobile side of things forward?
Yeah, look, in terms of Robin is actually very correct there in terms of the most people in Africa will encounter the internet, and it won't be a smartphone, is where you're slightly incorrect.
It's
going to be a feature phone.
Yeah.
Most people in Africa will encounter the internet for the first time, and probably the only time on feature phones. We're never, with the sheer population that we have in Africa, we're never ever going to equip them with the kind of PC rollouts that have been seen in the Western world, and I don't believe with modern technology that there's any need to. I don't think everybody's going to be living permanently on mobile phones. They're not comfortable to work with for a start. So
and
until we sort
reading
out
things on a 3-inch screen is not fantastic.
No.
Yeah, and if you're anything bigger than 10 years old, anyway. So yeah, I think we will see more effective and more efficient form factors when it comes to traditional desktop and laptop PCs. Tablets are a great option, but again, unless you can really use it in an enterprise context, if you can run your SAP systems off your tablets, they're not going to gain that widespread usage, because ultimately money makes the world go round, and the corporates are the ones that have got 5,000 desktop fleets, 5,000 iPad fleets. So where they're spending their money is where the technology is going to go, and consumerization of IT is fine, but at the end of the day, it's the corporations that have the dollars, and their requirements will drive that. So no, the PC is not quite dead yet, although it's struggling a bit.
I think it's not dead. I think also peer-to-peer communication is going to be critical. I mean, it's crazy at the moment if my wife and myself are working in the same room and we happen to forward an email to one another, it goes off into the cloud and bounces back down again. And in order for the networks to be able to manage their spectrum efficiently, Wi-Fi offloading and even peer-to-peer offloading is going to become critical, because there's just not, spectrum is a finite resource and there's just not enough to go around.
And we have serious issues with spectrum allocation and the auctioning of at the moment.
When we get it, yeah.
Let's not get into that. That's another 3-hour discussion.